welcome to The Sound of Design
with Mark
and Dan and
Josh Gwynn from McIntosh Group.
Hey!
Hey!
Excellent. As we're excited to be back and very happy that you guys have joined us on the Sound of Design podcast. We have Josh Gwynn, our special guest, so thank you very much for joining us. He is with McIntosh Group. He reps for Simiko as well as Project USA and also for Rotel. I just found out. A true musician and knows a ton of things hi-fi related. And so we're going to talk today all about the wonderful world of hi-fi audio and just listening to good tunes, good music. So, maybe to start it off, Josh, tell us just a little bit about your background and, kind of what brought you into the hi-fi industry. What kind of led you to the McIntosh Group?
Oh, it's a great story how I got there. It's really entertaining, but no, I mean, I was a lifelong musician. I had tons of musicians in my family. I'm an avid guitar collector, much more of an amateur musician nowadays. But, through years of working in retail, I found myself working for the large corporation that is Bose a little over, I would say 13, 14 years ago.
Wow.
I worked for them for quite some time. It was a fun company to work with, and then had the opportunity to work for a high-end dealer here in the tropical paradise that is Dayton, Ohio, and I spent a lot of time at a dealer called Hanson Audio Video, and now there's 2 locations, Cincinnati and Dayton, and they're beautiful locations if anybody gets a chance to take a trip that way. Reference level dealers here. And then, I got the opportunity to work for a couple more brands, and then I landed myself here at the McIntosh Group, representing McIntosh and Fine Sounds America, which has the distribution for Project, Rotel Michi, and Simiko Cartridges.
Awesome. So, what is it? Because you just, you talk about titans of an industry and the legendary brands. Like you rolled them off your tongue like there was nothing to it. It's like that's like somebody saying like, I work for Porsche or I work for Ferrari. Like I work for one of the absolute best manufacturers on the planet that does what it is that you do. And it shouldn't be I think unsaid that starting with McIntosh, you guys have just an incredible history and you've had such an influence not just in music but in American culture, like just in general. And so it's a pretty amazing story. So what is it about McIntosh that sort of has that heritage and that history? Maybe tell us a little bit about where that came from and why then you've kind of paired up with some of these other brands that kind of fall in the same vein.
That's a great question. So McIntosh this year in 2024 is celebrating 75 years of being a company, founded by engineers, Frank McIntosh, Gordon Gow, 2 people who really saw an opportunity, as engineers will. They like to solve problems. At one point in time, they were designing production studios for the government and some other clients, and they really, really needed some kind of amplification that was low distortion. And that was kind of the precipice of where we started as a company. And, we found ourselves later, not a lot of companies set out to be a luxury audio brand or an aspirational luxury audio brand. You find yourself there, through years of engineering, or even like watch companies, tons of engineering, just good luck on, product launches and, just being in the right place at the right time. Because, you really can't plan for that. You just have to push it through and have the right people under your belt and the proper engineers to really get there. And they found themselves, with a lot of unique history behind it. So like, powering Woodstock and the Grateful Dead Wall of Sound and, lots of other things. And then we find ourselves in a lot of high-end homes, but, just in a lot of enthusiast homes. That's really the key thing is, people will look at a brand like Macintosh and compare it to a brand like Porsche or Rolex and all these very aspirational types of things. But, we're in a lot of very, normal people homes that can afford this because that's what they strive for. That's what they saved for, and that's what they worked on to get there. And so there's, kind of a very, very long, unique brand story that we won't go into full in detail right now, but through just, the right mindset and the right engineering and design, and just quality product. And, they've kind of been the American dream. And if anybody gets the opportunity to ever visit the factory in Binghamton, it is old American, it's an old American factory. It's families and generations that have worked on that line. And I grew up right here in Ohio in a big manufacturing area and had family members that worked in machine shops and injection molding shops. And it is very nostalgic to walk in there and know that this quality product that delivers for a lot of people is built on the backs of families who really are passionate about it.
Yeah. I actually did have the opportunity to go visit Binghamton for a mastery program a few years ago. And it was probably one of the coolest trips that I've gone on. You fly into this little airport that's like 2 gates. The person when I left, the person that takes your luggage at the gate is the person who then, scans you to get onto the plane. So it was a lot of fun. But you go down to this little hotel in the middle of town, right on the river. And then we went to the factory for the next couple days. But I was just very humbled by the experience. Everyone I talked to was a son or daughter, niece or nephew of someone that actually worked there, when they were young. So it was just really humbling to be there.
Yeah, and it's an exciting experience. I know they've kind of opened it up a bit more to the public as well, just to see, because it is, we are a very, very small company. It's and then we've kind of expanded into the Macintosh group of brands. So we own a distribution distribution company that has the rights to distribute in the North America and some other areas, Rotel and Michi product, and Project turntables from Austria, and Simiko cartridges, and we really have that benchmark that we expect out of Macintosh products. We expect that out of the brands that we distribute as well. And so now you see like Rotel Michi, they rate for all channels driven, which is a very unique thing that, not a lot of people are doing.
Everybody does.
Yeah, not everybody does. And,
yep.
That's something that is very, very important that Mac has done this whole time. And if you ever get a chance to maybe have Ken Zellin on here or something like that, he'll go through, why stereo is rated the way it is versus multi-channel and all the fun stories he has around that, because he was there for it.
That's awesome.
So, and he's kind of the historian that we have on that stuff. And he's, but we do have we ask a lot of our brands that we distribute. And then we also do have a sister brand that's based out of Vicenza, Italy, called Sonus Faber.
Yep. Absolutely.
And,
yep.
It's not in the, in every dealer's portfolio, but it is a growing, it's been around 40 years, but it is a very growing brand. We're really stepping into the ultra luxury, ultra high end. The most recent CES, we launched the new reference level, which is
I saw that. They look amazing.
Yes.
Suprema.
They do.
I haven't got to hear it yet, but I've known about it for a long time, and I'm finally excited to be able to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, because it's hard to keep that in, honestly, when it's that it's like having a secret government experiment under your that you just want to tell everybody, but you can't.
Like, we've had lasers in the sky or something, and no one knows, right?
No one knew.
Yeah. That is awesome. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. I do want to touch real fast on something that you said about the generational aspect. I don't know of another brand that encapsulates or really, like, from a real experience perspective, that matches brand at the level that Mac does. There's just something about it. My dad has a Macintosh, and there was a story that I'll share very briefly about a gentleman who came from Korea to the United States 50 years ago and got a Macintosh stereo and bought 50 years later from me a Macintosh stereo to give back to the son of the guy who helped him, as kind of like a sentiment and a show of respect and honor. And it's like, you don't get stories like that out of other brands. It's, you know, people will have speakers for a long time, and yeah, my dad had a pair of speakers, but that's generally where it ends. But if your dad had a Mac, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's different. That's something else. And so it's like the most amazing brand, because there's just something other on another level about it. And so for you to say that these other brands are hitting that same level, what you expect of yourselves is what you've got in these others, I just think speaks volumes to the fact that there are other people who are as serious about sound and about music and about getting that accurate and amazing and good quality sound, that you guys have been able to partner up with them. Because I don't think it's an understatement to say that it is the most iconic audio brand, I think, in American history. I could be wrong. There might be others, like, you know, that but I'm just saying, like, there's just something, uniquely American about what Macintosh is and what you guys do. So
yeah, and it's a good point, because and it's probably several factors, and anything I say on that topic is pure speculation on my part, because there's no way to
prove it, right, buddy?
Yeah, quantify something that happens serendipitously over a course of 75 years, other than just, the hard work and labor that comes with it. But, when I started with Hanson way back in the day, my first day there, we had a Mac reference system, the big 2KW, $500,000 system. I was so overwhelmed and had no idea what I was looking at. I just knew it looked so cool, and it looked slightly vintage. It looked slightly modern at the same time. It was timeless. And then I got to hear it, and I was like, that was the first large reference level system I ever experienced. And it was a line array system, so it was filling this massive room that we used to have in the old Dayton showroom. And it was a really unique experience. And then through my journey within the first few years, I really started to understand that Macintosh is the benchmark of what other audio products are graded against. Because people would come in and they would look at another brand that was more expensive than Macintosh by a long shot, and they say, is it better than a Mac? Is it better than, how does it compare to a Mac? Whether they wanted Mac or not, they wanted to know if it was better than Mac, or if it was and that was always that benchmark thing. So I understood how to use that and leverage that, either to sell it by selling down, or to really, position other things. And that's where we were successful in that, is understanding that where it lies, and, that honesty. Because, let's be real, Mac, in some cases, could manufacture some stuff that's way more expensive and still sell it at the same rate. We don't, because we believe in things that should only cost so much.
Right.
And, we do the absolute best with the exact dollar amount we're trying to hit. Because if you look at our line, it goes, incrementally up, from entry level to, holy crap, that's,
that's right.
And people can build it up.
What for what?
Yeah. And again, people seem to think that, Mac is only for the ultra wealthy, for the 1%ers. And this is a fun story. This actually happened recently. I was up in Chicago, and I was talking to somebody on one of the floor, not a core store, but we were back in the premium area.
Yep.
And this customer approached me. He saw my Macintosh hoodie I had on. He's like, "Oh, Mac." He's like, that's some pretty expensive stuff. And I'm like, it is, but it's how you decide on how you do your money. And he's like, I'm a trucker. I don't know if I could ever do that. But I was like, well, I mean, I told him, I was like, I live in a very middle-class neighborhood. There is nobody ultra wealthy in my neighborhood, but there are people there is tons of people with Harley Davidsons in my neighborhood, and those aren't cheap. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I have 3 of them. And then we added up how much he had. He could have had a well-designed Macintosh system for what he had in my Harleys, but he could have had a very, very good integrated amplifier and say Kef speakers and all this, like very well matched for one Harley that he had. So he had it. He was a truck driver, but his passion was Harleys. We got him thinking about the Mac after that. He's like, oh, I didn't really think about it that way. But it's like, you can use this Macintosh every single day. Can you drive that motorcycle in Chicago every day? No.
No, you cannot.
Nope.
And for a lot of people, it's also, it holds its value. We've historically seen our value being held, and it's important for people how they spend their money if they want to stay in the hobby is to not lose a whole lot of money on, trading up or however they choose to do it. And I've seen guys get into non-Macintosh systems that, we're talking well into the 6 figures who change their mind a few years later and they lose what I would consider a life-changing sum of money trading stuff out. So,
right.
There's kind of a beyond the history and everything else, there's just this like we've kind of designed the brand to be for everyone. As long as like you're passionate about it, you'll find the way.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and I think it's also, you talk about like, what's your passion? And I think Harleys are a good example. Classic cars would be the other, and so is there a cost? Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I think there's also something that kind of just we need to kind of maybe preface, which is that, all dollars are relative. I don't care who you are. I've seen the wealthiest people on the planet. They couldn't spend all their money in 3 lifetimes, and they're still going to walk in and say, yeah, but do I need to spend it? The issue is not, can I? Right? Like that stops being the question. The question is, should I? And I think this is the testament to the brand, is that the answer almost always comes back to yes. You go, oh, that's what it sounds like. And it's my favorite demo to do with folks who are uninitiated. Okay. You walk into a stereo store and have you ever heard any of this stuff? Oh, I have no idea. Right. And I just did this with somebody who's 22 years old. Okay. And I'm not going to age myself, but I was like, okay, you should be old enough to know a little. He never even knew that a speaker room existed or any of this kind of stuff. And we start off, I play him a nice Denon receiver, and then we jump over to a Marantz, and then we get into an Arcam, and then some Rotel, and then all of a sudden, you change the volume dial, and I turn the Mac way down, and I flip over to that, and he goes, what was that? Right? And he's like, and then we turn it up, and he goes, oh my goodness, that's awesome. And it's like, yes, welcome to the conversation, man. Like, this is what we're talking about. It's amazing. And if you've never heard it, and this is just a quick shout out to everybody watching or listening, if you've not heard McIntosh, find a local store in most major markets. You're going to be able to find somebody within an hour or two that you can get to. And if you don't, you call me and come visit me in Nashville, and we'll get you set up with a demo. It's unbelievable. To just the first time you listen to it, it is truly a life-changing experience. So
yeah, absolutely. Sure. And it always comes down to I use this quote in my training as the old Aldo Gucci quote, where quality is remembered long after price is forgotten.
Hey, yes. I've heard that before.
So
the joke is it's in Mark's email signature.
Yep. Oh, is it? I didn't even know.
It is.
He texted me.
It is. Yep.
Oh, that's awesm. All right, so keep going.
Yeah, it's a very powerful phrase. So so it's one of those humbling phrases that it is very powerful. So Mark, I'm really happy you used that in your email. I need to go back through and see that.
It's actually not in there currently, but I need to put it back in.
Yep.
I'll say that. I used to use it. I use it as a closing tool quite a bit, but that's neither here nor there.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's
awesome.
incredibly, powerful because it really puts things in perspective, because I mean, I've pulled some Band-Aids off and made some pretty high dollar purchases, not just in hi-fi, but like guitar gear and pedals and, things that I, and I don't play out much really at all anymore or anything like that. I just wanted it. And then I've now had it for a few years. It's long been paid for, and I'm really happy I made that purchase still.
Yep.
And that's something that happens with McIntosh Amp. And again, we have other brands under our portfolio. If that's not attainable, we can get you ultra low distortion and high dynamics without spending a whole lot of money. But ultimately, that is a lot of people's goal.
Well, and I think you're right to bring it up, and it's a perfect transition because the other brands that I would say actually still fall under the same category, but just to a lesser degree, and the most familiar one that I'm, kind of the most familiar with, I should say, is Rotel. I have Rotel in my living room. I've got it in my studio rack right next to me. The preamps are fantastic. The multi-channel amps are phenomenal. Like, I have absolutely no problem looking at someone and saying like, okay, I understand you maybe we can't get to that level now. Maybe that's an end game, or maybe that's a little bit later, but I still want to do something that's just truly awesome and really good sounding and, smooth as butter and all these, wonderful kinds of things. And man, you put Rotel on, you compare it to almost anything and you're going, holy crap, that's fantastic. That's really good. And it costs what? Like, all right, there's a cost, but that's not bad.
Yeah, it's very attainable compared to like what people are spending on PC gaming and high-end TVs and things like that. It is well within that wheelhouse.
Yeah, 1,000%. So, let's say that I wanted to, kind of shift gears a little bit because Mac is an iconic brand, and Rotel is one. Most people hear that brand and they're thinking chips. It's not chips. It's an audio manufacturer. Just let's just be clear real fast. But one that I was new to was Project, and until I started working actually in the industry about a decade ago, I had never heard of Project. Could you tell us just a little bit about those guys and what it is that they do? Because they almost seem like they're the best value for like on a dollar for dollar basis for like personal audio as well as obviously for turntables. I mean, they're just unbelievably good, and I kind of think you're if I dare say underpriced for what it is that those things are. I mean, they just sound amazing.
Yeah, Project is a really unique brand, and I'm really excited to be partnering with them and working with them as closely as I am, because it is audio gear made by enthusiasts who understand what the enthusiast is looking for, and it's done in an ultra simple fashion. So again, there is literally if you're into audio, there is a Project product for you somehow, whether it be a a small digital DAC, a phono preamp, a turntable, a reference level turntable. I mean, you name it, they got it. And I mean, one of the newest things that they've decided to engineer and launch is our new True Balance cables and phono stages. And so we're able to do a moving coil cartridge is inherently balanced. It just loses its balance once it leaves, it goes into the RCA end cables and into whatever phono amp, it's going into. We now have a multi-DIN connector that preserves that balanced signal, that 3 dB dynamic range that you get with balanced cables, and can go into a true balanced phono preamp. And now we have a solid state version and we have a tube version, and it's phenomenal. Once I set it up I did it at set it up at Best Buy not Achievers, it was D2C, and it was just in a hall, not a great room or whatever, and I set that up and played just whatever record I had, and I'm like, holy goodness, I can never unhear this, and it's not unattainable.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. So maybe Mark, I'm going to throw it to you real fast. Can you just, for those who don't understand what moving coil is or balanced and unbalanced, can you give us a Reader's Digest version of what that is, just to bring folks up to speed? Because that's the coolest thing I've heard in the last six months, I think. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, I mean, we can kind of start with balanced and unbalanced first, because I actually just talked to a customer about it today. Is essentially when you have a balanced connection, that's typically using an XLR connection, right? So you have, if you were to look at it, you've got 3 different conductors that you can see on each end of the cable. But essentially, you have a hot and a cold, and what that does is one is in phase, one's kind of out of phase of each other. So as the signal comes down, you have whatever noise that is brought into the system because of that connection. When it gets to the other end, it sums together and eliminates the noise that was incurred from that connection, right? Versus unbalanced doesn't have that cold, if you will. So it's inherently going to be a noisier connection depending on how you have it connected, right?
Yep. And so it's that positive negative cancels out, right? That's what's happening. Is it's canceling out the noise that the cable would have introduced. Okay.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
And then a moving coil cartridge. Maybe just illuminate a little bit about that, and then we'll keep it rolling.
I mean, it's. I mean, maybe you can even explain it a little bit easier than I can, Josh, because I mean, I can get pretty technical with it. But essentially, I might just throw it to you, just because I'm going to go really deep into over the head of people.
No, it's easily done. So, so we understand that both style of cartridges. There's the cantilever and the stylus that touches the record and moves around and conducts energy, and then that reports to a moving magnet schematic or setup. It's a magnet that's bouncing between coils to create voltage.
Right.
In a moving coil, it's swapped. It's magnets, and it's a coil that's making the vibrations, and it's actually a lot lower signal, but it's able to extract more detail out of the recording. So it's held as a higher performance cartridge in most cases. I'm very happy with moving magnet cartridges. I have plenty of the Simiko Rainier family on my turntables here. They sound phenomenal, but a moving coil is inherently superior in most cases. There is going to be a project balanced moving magnet cartridge coming. So
sweet.
So there is some stuff in the works. That's not a secret by any means, but that will be hopefully around some point in time. But but other than that, I mean, that's essentially what it is. And so when you can get a fully balanced signal that touches the record and goes all the way through to your speaker ends. Like you're talking about an incredible amount of detail that it's going to be in your face and very immersive. I mean, it's putting, I don't know who your favorite artists are, but if you want, like, say, what am I listening to? Let's say the Black Pumas, it's putting them right there. It's giving you all everything they could ever want,
Well, and I think the key is, and I'm glad I asked both of you to kind of put some of that stuff together for folks who are not technical, because you both hit on something, which is low noise, right? Low distortion. There's nothing, we think about gear and we say, it's going to do this thing for me. We don't think about the negative effect that the gear has on the signal itself. And so to say that you've got something that's fully balanced, right? Or you've got something that's a moving coil, right? That is so low noise and so low distortion. It's like, well, what's left? Well, only the good stuff is left. Only what's actually there is left. And so now it's, to your point, right? Fully present. Everything that is there, I can hear, and I can further my enjoyment. Like I can really, actually have a deeper connection with the music and with the artist who made it, because I'm right there with them. We're hanging out. We're doing the thing, right? So, I love the way that you put that. And so traditionally moving coils would be better, right? Not to say that there's something wrong with moving magnet. And so are those, I've seen this on some Macintosh gear, where it'll say MC and MM. Is that a distinct input then, I'm assuming, depending on the type of cartridge that you have, that you would put on that turntable and then hook it up to, say, a Mac Pre or an integrated or something like that?
So what really is happening there is, so if it's an for the moving magnet input, that's a sec impedance of 47 kilo ohms. So it never changes. We can always count on it being the same. It's actually very common before it gets into any of the equalization or something that happens else in the phono stage that makes it special. But when an MC, it's going to be more. You're going to have to dial things in a little bit more. There's going to be a lot more variables, resistance values, things like that you can tailor. The nice thing about the Mac here is it's usually done on screen, so you can actually do it as you listen. I have some phono preamps here in my house where if I want to change anything, I have to flip it upside down and make switches. It's not fun.
Yep.
With Mac,
they make you work for it.
Yeah, exactly. Mac, they don't do that. Even our MP100, which is one of the lowest noise phono preamps money can buy, you can sit there and just dial it in as you on the record that you know the most. It's very user friendly.
That's awesome. I didn't know that was possible, honestly. I know that you guys have some phenomenal calibration software, and we've used like in surround sound rooms, like Room Perfect and things along those lines. And, so like definitely knew some of that, but I had no idea that you could actually dial in an MC cartridge input on a phono stage. That's incredible, actually.
Yep, and it really it's a unique thing. It's for the hobbyists that really get into it. That's like what it's almost the level of learning to like intonate your guitar.
Sure,
like you're gonna start hearing flaws in other things. You're gonna really tune your ear to what it should sound like, and it's really, if you want to go to that next level in your listening and your abilities, and you really have time on your hands, that's a great way to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you said intonation, because I play guitar, I play piano, and it's kind of hard to describe when people say, well, I can't hear this, or, I'll never hear the difference, or I've never had anything. So I just heard a client say this today, well, we've never had anything even mid-level. So how could I tell the difference between that and high end? And it's like, yeah, but once you hear it, like, it doesn't take any special skill. You just got to sit there. That's it.
Yep.
And maybe you think a little bit, oh, maybe there's a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. And, okay, fine. But I mean, can you taste the difference between a good steak and a bad steak? And a good hamburger and a bad, of course you can.
Yep.
like it's just senses, so you have and I guess my ultimate point is that it truly is accessible. You should never think, oh, well, that's only for the educated listener. It's like, that's garbage. If it sounds good, it sounds good. That's it.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, and if you're a novice listener, great. You have cheap taste. That's great. You're not spoiled like we are, and now it's like, oh God, now I'm overcomplicating my whole system because I know that how that is supposed to sound, and I'm trying to find it, and I'm chasing that tone, and I'm not as bad with it with hi-fi, but I'm really bad with pedals. Oh, it's just if you would see the floor down here below me, it's kind of a mess.
Yep.
But that's my hobby. I can't wait to see how this version of a tube screamer compares with this version of an OCD, and swapping them and one before the other in the gain staging. And so, there is a point where, I've gone too far in something that is not hi-fi, thank God.
Well, but you know what? I mean, so we brought up the Harley guy before, right? And, I think this is true with anything. Like if I switch out, this set of tires for that set of tires, is it going to change your experience? Well, yeah, of course it is, right? If I put, some sort of an upgrade, like maybe like a better exhaust system or something along those lines, is that going to improve the performance of the bike? Well, yeah, of course it is, right? So I think that's all we're talking about. It's just not, you don't have to necessarily go too complex with it. You
just got to be not afraid to play with it. You got to.
Yes.
You got to be, don't, I know, like, it took me a long time to really nail down speaker imaging and placing the speakers in the room to get the most out of them. I feel like it took me forever to get that down, you know. But I finally, like, instead of doing it just in the showroom, I brought it home. I finally bought a proper speakers, got the amp, decided what room I'm going to do it in, and I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it till I could finally nail the focals in the middle and have things happening off to the sides, and, you know, having that 2-channel experience that most people are looking for when they're into the hobby.
Yep.
For sure.
I should say when they're critically listening, not just like passive listening to,
Yep.
you know.
Which is two, you know, legitimately two different experiences. Like we'd had,
Yep.
you know, some previous guests on that, you know, talk about, you know, if I'm cooking and I want to listen to music, like what's the best way to get there? Like it's a totally different question, right? And you'll end up with a different answer as a result of it, as opposed to I'm going to sit on my couch or sit in my chair and, you know, be in this one, you know, main listening position. Right. And I think you do have to kind of think through your own usage to get to the right type of system design that's going to make sense for you and for your room, quite honestly. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any car like that you're putting on a racetrack, you're going to tweak, you're going to try to get the best of it. If it's, you know, if it performs great right off the bat, great. But you know how drivers are. They're going to tweak it. They're going to try to eke out a little bit more performance. They're going to look at, is it possible? Well, let's try it. So.
Yep. I'll tell you, I mean, not to shift away from anything, but, you know, we were talking about Project and some of the cool stuff that you guys have. And immediately, you know, when I first started working with you guys, like I needed to learn how a turntable works. So I bought a Project debut Carbon E-Spirit was the model I got.
Perfect.
So I had upgraded acrylic platter that your record set on, and it had a speed box. That was important to me. I didn't want to be moving my belt around. But over the years, and Dan, you actually turned me onto this, the amp box. It was
Yes.
the S2. There's an S3 at the time. And that little thing blows. I have one here. It actually used to power my Kef metas that I have, the LS50 metas. And it did a hell of a job powering those things, considering how much power Kef can handle.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say like the cool stuff, there's just so much stuff out there for everyone. Like that has worked great for distributed audio projects where maybe we didn't have a lot of room for a normal size 17.5-inch amp, and maybe not even enough room for a Sonos amp or something along those lines. So we could throw in a little Sonos port, stack the amp box on top of it, and now I've got a zone of distributed audio in the size of, you know, a hamburger. I mean, literally that small. It blew my mind when I saw the size of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to jump on that. So I have my amp box actually running a pair of 8-inch in-ceiling speakers in my master bedroom. It runs Zone 2 off of a processor, so it's a little distributed system. And I had a Rotel on it before. And I'm going to be honest, the Rotel has more power. So yes, my volume control is a little different because the amp box wasn't as powerful. But man, I tell you what, when I'm at the same relative listening volume level, I'm not missing anything. I could not believe it. I expected there to be missing bass or, you know, this crispy edge on this little thing. Like, you know, you watch you know, an action movie like, you know, Lord of the Rings or something, and there's like the sword fight or something. Like, you don't expect there to have that detail where the swords are clashing with each other. And it was there. And I was like, how is that doing that? Like, no joke. That's, you know, not an expensive thing. $300-$400, $500, I want to say, like, depending on your market and where you're at and all that. I mean, for that price point, it's unbelievably good. Unbelievably good.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah, Fisher thing.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and that's the testament, I think, to Project. And you said it about Mac too. It's like, for the dollar amount, I need to be the best I can. Of course, if we throw money at it, we've said this before, if you spend $7 million on whatever it is, it's going to be awesome. Great. The question is, what can I do at $6,000? What can I do at $20,000? What can I do at $2,000? And can I make it awesome for that, whatever that number is? I don't even care what the number is. I just want it awesome at that number. Right.
Yeah, and you always, and Project's a great example of this is they're always going to hit above their weight class.
Yes.
So it's always going to perform higher than what you're buying it at. So an example of that is even our reference level turntables that are getting into that $12,000 to $14,000 range. I have some experience with some much higher price point turntables, and these hang all day long. They're very easy to use. They're still gorgeous. They have unique features that only Project has because the founder of Project is an enthusiast himself, and he is looking for certain things and designs them for what he's looking for. And we get the benefit of that. So that's always, Project is shocking. Same with Rotel. Again, our Michi line. If it would be a very expensive brand if it was made here in the U.S., but luckily it's made in China, but it's still made by a family-ran business that's been around for 65 years, 67? I have to do the math. But yeah, they've been around for over 50 and been in the hi-fi realm. And, they've made a bunch of other things. They've been an OEM manufacturer for a long time. And one of the ways they're able to keep the price down is they manufacture their own transformer, and that's a very, very expensive component. Yeah. And they do it for a lot of other brands. I won't say who. I don't know who, honestly, but
they do.
They do, and so they are able to get this high performance value product out of a very attainable cost. So, and again, somebody we'll say the Michi M8 monoblocks, they're 1800 watts going into 4 ohms. Like, nobody in their right mind needs that much power, but hey, you can do it, and we'll sell it to you.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and I think it's fair to say, not that you don't need it, but I think need is such a unique concept, right? Because it's relative. So, right. So if I have a $30,000 set of speakers, then you know what? Like, I'm not putting a $300 amp on them.
Yeah.
Like, I do need a better amp. I mean, and that's really what I think good design is about, is matching that level of performance, right? If I have this, right, then I need to match it with something that's going to be compatible and at that same performance level. And that's really just work with your designer, work with your integrator, work with your dealer, make sure you're having the conversations and you're double checking. And if you want to cheat one way or the other, fine. But, absolutely, I think it's, all things need to be, built together and kind of put together. So they match.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that somebody wouldn't need 1,800 watts. I'm just saying it's an extreme number for the price point. And, the pair would cost you about 16,000, which for that much power at Class A, B, that's a lot, but I mean, we just want to be able to give you an option to power any set of speakers in any dealer's portfolio.
Yep.
Because again, there's some speakers out there that need a lot of power, and people are putting them in ginormous rooms, and we want to deliver.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned ginormous rooms, because I just did a walkthrough for a client. And so we're in the Nashville area, and we do serve kind of the surrounding states. And so sometimes we'll find our way down to Alabama or Kentucky or, wherever. And, this particular walk was for a guy who was building a new home with an attached barn, which is going to be like a multi-function room, right? And so he's talking about they're going to have a basketball court in there, and it's going to be a great place for the kids and for the grandkids. And, there's a big space, 40 by 48 feet, I want to say, 20-foot ceilings. I mean, it's half a gymnasium, right? Is really what it is. And they're like, we want to have great sound in here. And so to the point of, how much power do you need? Well, all of a sudden I'm racking through my brain, like, what commercial solutions do we have? Like, I'm not even looking at the residential lineup, in a sense, right? Because I'm going, yeah, this is a big space. Our TV sizes, Mark knows this, like, we can get a 100-inch television for less than 10 grand. Like, well, why is there a market for that? Well, because the ceilings are another 2 feet up, and right, the walls have gone out a little further, and now every home, it seems like, is that much bigger than it used to be, compared to what we were building in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So the need is relative, man. It's absolutely relative.
Yep. And it is interesting to kind of bunch. Now we're going to talk about TVs, but it's interesting how even you put a 100-inch TV in the right room, it may look small.
That's exactly what's going on right now.
Yep. I have a very small house. I have a 55-inch TV in my living room. It seems like the appropriate size, but you put that same 55-inch TV even in a showroom, and it looks tiny.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. I actually had a client of mine yesterday come in, and they looked at. We were pretty far away. We were walking back towards where the 98-inch TV was. So they wanted to see it, and they're like, "That's it." I mean, granted, we were like 35, 40 feet away, like walking towards it.
I love it.
But even when we got close enough, they're like, okay, well, it's not my 120-inch projector screen, but you know what? I want to remodel my living room, so I'll probably put it in there.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
There you go. Yep.
Yep, exactly. The giant box store presentation kind of probably does dwarf some of those TV sizes for you.
Yep.
That's all right, though. That's all right. Well, so we've talked a bit about Project, and we've mentioned it now a couple times, but that's Simiko. And they're specifically, like, we did a little bit on moving coil versus moving magnet. So maybe just give us a little insight as to why it's necessary in the first place to have a brand that only does cartridges. I get the idea of specialty, but that even goes to, like, I think a whole nother level. And so just maybe tell us a little bit about Simiko and what it is that those guys kind of specialize in.
A great question. Simiko is a unique company because, again, it's just cartridges. And it's incredibly important for us to be in I would say the enthusiast world of hi-fi audio, and be able to play on, be able to touch every point of your system. And McIntosh makes reference level turntables. Project makes makes all turntables, I should say, from the smallest possible wall mounted turntable all the way up to things that are just absolutely insane. And we got to give you an option. So luckily, like, Project is kind enough to let us in the US to put Simiko cartridges on the turntables that we distribute here in the US. And that's a unique thing because they've used some other brands like Autofod and things in the past, but the partnership is growing, and it's really showing that it's going to be tried and true as far as we go, because Simiko has put some unique features into a lot of the product line that only Simiko has, or at least it's easily done through the Simiko way of doing things, I should say. That's a better way to put it. So, like, an example is the Rainier family of cartridges. So I wish I had an example here. Saying if I had a cartridge laying around. For the listener, pull up the website if you're not driving. Yep. But no, there's the Rainier family cartridge. It's two pieces that make the whole cartridge. It's the styli portion that can be easily replaced, and then the body of it, which will be black in this case. And it's easy to remove the styli and replace it with the replacement styli. You don't have to adjust the counterweight on the tone arm. You don't have to do anything. It's all universal through Rainier all the way up to Wellfleet, which is 4. Rainier, Olympia, Moonstone, and Wellfleet being, going up in that order and performance, because the little tiny styli changes, and that it's a little more sensitive as you go up, and it extracts more data out of those records. And so that's unique. So not only do you have a very cheap way to replace a styli, because they do wear out over time.
Yep.
But you also have an easy way to upgrade. So if somebody has a debut Carbon Evo now, comes with a stock Rainier, and they want to buy a Moonstone or Wellfleet, all they need to do is buy that tiny little replacement styli, which is cheaper than buying the whole cartridge and user replaceable. In my case, I have Moonstone on my turntable in the living room when my friends come over, and if they have a drink, too many drinks, and I don't trust them, I swap it out for the Rainier, because that's easier to replace and cheaper to replace. So there's a lot of use cases in those. And if you get up to the Amethyst, which is a similar style, but
awesome, beautiful
cartridge. it is backwards compatible with all those cartridges. You just can't go the other way around. You can't put a Rainier, you can't put a replacement Amethyst cartridge on a Rainier family body because it's going to bottleneck the performance. The coils are different. The motor mechanism is different. So we've made that very user friendly for the end user. So again, if Best Buy ships it, like has a turntable that goes to a client and you're harder to get to, they can easily do some of these things. And then we have a whole line of entry level to reference level moving coils that are phenomenal. They can't do the same replacement, but there are always retipping solutions that can be sent in and retipped, and so you're never out of your styli there. There's always a solution. So it's very unique to be able to work with both Macintosh and Project on that level, and then still provide it as its own brand. So
yeah, well, and just so people are aware, I cannot tell you the number of times that we put in a very nice system, right? Client goes on vacation, and the true story, the cleaning lady comes through. Mark laughs because I'm sure he's had this too. Right?
It's happened.
Josh, you probably have as well, right? You get a phone call. Yeah, she took a feather duster, right, to the system, and I get the picture, and there's that needle just bent to one side and just not usable anymore, and family members, people don't know what they're doing, and so it's a sensitive piece of equipment. It really shouldn't be touched by human hands, to be honest.
The same thing for children. One of my earliest memories in my life was I was a child of the 80s, and I saw the Run DMC music video on MTV. I was 1 or 2 years old. I walked over to my mom's turntable, and I destroyed it. So,
man.
So we make that easier to replace that if you're in that moving magnet world, because it is inherently easier to do from an engineering standpoint. But they sound great. I have Moonstone on my turntable in the living room. It sounds absolutely phenomenal. I've done turntables that have cartridges that are all the way up to 17,000. Wow. And talk about stressful.
Yeah, for sure.
Installing that. But and by far it's phenomenal, but these moving magnets work great for me. I'm listening to a lot of rock and metal, things like that that really works well for those. That sound. Yeah. I do have some some jazz recordings and some classical recordings that have a lot of data that a moving coil definitely could perform better, but hey, I like to be able to change things out and keep my costs low.
Yep, absolutely. Sure. Well, I think that's so amazing too, because you're at a point where people kind of think about, you spend a bunch of money on a system, and let's just say $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000, but you don't want to necessarily do that every year, right? And so I think of this as a way for you at a very low cost, right? A way to upgrade and bring a system back to life. And so, there's this thing that happens when you listen to a song on a really good system, and this is to me like one of those benchmark concepts. Did it sound like the first time I heard it? Like, I remember the first time I heard, this particular song, and I'll give you an example. Aaron Copland, Fanfare for the Common Man. Most people will know it from the U.S. Marines commercial back in the 90s, right? Da, 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 right? Great song. Beautiful horn section. And I remember listening to that. My dad had a Macintosh with a couple Bose speakers and a Bose subwoofer, and it sounded really good. And I'll never forget the first time we listened to it on 1.2s in the premium room, and that had a pair of B&W 801s on them, right? And it was like, oh, that is the first time I have ever heard that song like that. I mean, that was and so it becomes kind of this benchmark. Like, I can relive the first time I ever heard this great piece of music, any artist, any band, and now my system and my collection are brought back to life again, right? So you get to enjoy even more for even longer. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like those moments when you add some kind of component to a system, and it's like, well, I got to hear everything that I just, that I've already bought. It's all new to me now, and oh yeah, that's always an exciting time. I know some people do that when they get a new home theater, you know, and they get that awesome projector. They got to watch all their favorite movies again. They got to watch Ghostbusters, you know, they got to watch the trilogy, Lord of the Rings. They got to, you know, they've already seen these movies, but they have to see it again because they're going to see something new. They're gonna. There's another detail that's there, and it's always fun. And with hi-fi and ultra low distortion, I was, you know, in my, you know, we mentioned before, a lifelong musician. You know, I played in cover bands and all this other stuff. I really wish I had a high resolution system back in the day when I was trying to learn all these songs.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yep.
Oh my god, the things that I was like, I was playing that wrong for so many years. Had no idea there was an extra, you know, like ghost note somewhere in there in that run or something like that, and just had no idea because historically, I had boombox or Bluetooth speaker or something that wasn't getting me quite there. I thought I was there, I was not there.
Yep. Yeah, 1,000%. Man, I play by ear, and I was fortunate to be classically trained for some of my time, but I'm not a good reader. So to be quite honest, over the last 20 years or so, I probably rely on my ear more than I do, you know, anything else. Like I cannot tell you the number of times trying to teach somebody a song and they say, you know, pull out a cell phone and they're like, hey, can you teach me how to play this song? And it's like, I can't even hear that song. So like, how am I supposed to teach you what this is supposed? You're going to play it to me on a half inch, you know, by quarter of an inch little speaker. There's no power. It's a half a watt or whatever it is. Like, come on, like there's it's not even the song. Like,
right. Yeah. Nope. And who knows? I mean, even in some cases with, you know, both of you guys know with production, you know, there's magic tricks and they've been doing that for 60 years. So, I mean, that may be an extra piece in other guitars. So like, you know, being able to like get closer to those details and be able to hear those. It's nice to little, you know, take a peek behind the curtain there. And see how it was done, especially if you can get, you know, reference level recordings and again, if you've been into a nice studio and actually like heard how things actually sound on certain things. I was fortunate enough many years ago. I was in the Nashville area and I was able to visit and actually record at the Welcome to 1979 studio, which is an all analog studio, and that was a life-changing experience to really hear things on tape and in a room and as it was done and kind of, you know, listen to Chris Mara explain like, oh, this is how they did this. And this is how they would have scrubbed the vocals and, you know, re-recorded over this, you know, like, you know, all the little nuanced tricks. And now, and going back on these recordings now, it's like, oh, maybe I can hear that there, you know, I can catch that a little bit better. Cause now it's the whole saying, I can't unsee it. I can't unhear it, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
So it's always exciting. So.
Well, and I'm reminded when I was in school, they did this bit. It's funny you mentioned, like, once I heard it on tape, right? So we listened to a CD of a Snoop Dogg record in class, and all they did was unplugged it from the mains, and they plugged it into a tape machine, and then just tracked the output over to the mixer, right? And they hit play, let the tape machine just didn't do anything else, just let it play. And I go, oh, that's awesome. Why are we in Pro Tools again? Because I think we took a giant step back. No offense to Pro Tools. I have Pro Tools. Like, but like, and I get the, you know, the economics of it and the, you know, non-destructive and all the other things that go along with it. But man, that sound so good, was just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, everybody should, you know, take an opportunity to go to a tape camp or something to hear like an original recording, like you know, right off the master late or however it is they're going to do it. It is, I mean, hi-fi can get you, I mean, dang close, but it is something else in the studio.
Yeah,
and so it is live. You know, like when you see an artist live, there's something else there. There's this connection that you have that can't, you know, it's you can get pretty dang close, but you got to hear that artist live. I was up in Detroit a couple months ago, and I got to see one of my favorite artists, Thundercat.
There you go.
And I was exhausted after that because again, his live music is different than his recording, and he takes a lot of liberties, and just how many times, you know, a song will change its tonal center within a 4-bar measure is just it was amazing, but it was also exhausting. Just trying to keep up mentally keep up with it. And obviously he's effortlessly doing it. He wrote it.
Right. So he's just expressing at that point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I feel it this way tonight. And you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that you could just do that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so now I'm waiting for that Thundercat live record so I can have those versions of it, because when he's on his CD or he's on his albums, he's doing the smoother, more 70s yacht rock kind of thing with some other stuff trickled in there. Live, he's full prog. He's just going crazy. He's like, all bets are off. It's a different world.
Oh man, what was that? Frank Zappa. There was a very famous interview with him, and it says something to the effect of, when you listen to most bands, he's talking, giving an interview, and he says something to the effect of, they have rehearsed that guitar solo, every single time, they know note for note, intonation by intonation, finger placement, like they've got it worked out, and they play it exactly the same every single night. He goes, when the time for my guitar solo comes up, it's me against the universe for 2 minutes, and I don't know what's going to happen. And neither does the audience.
True artist,
right? He's just like, we're putting it out there, and here we go, right? And so it's awesome that there's still guys who are doing that. Frank Zappa is not for everyone, but he's definitely brought him back to mind. It's awesome concept, because you can't get that anywhere else, right? It is truly a unique experience.
Oh, absolutely. And you're really capturing a moment in time, and there's always something so unique. And the story, I'm always watching podcasts and how they mixed it and hearing that stories, and like that's something that I love with hi-fi, is hearing a unique story about a recording and then going back and listening to it and like, oh, that is what that is. And like an example of that is Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion. Okay. There's a shaker, I think, in the right channel, and that day they forgot the shaker, the maraca, so they had to improvise. And so what it is Steven Tyler took a sugar packet and they cranked the preamp on the mic, and he's just sitting there using a sugar packet to get that sound. Go back and listen to it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And if you hear it on your resolution system, you're like, that you get a sense of that little tiny sweet and low packet or whatever it is.
Oh my goodness.
And I love that portion of, listening to music and giving me a reason to listen to it again. And, beyond just, hey, this is my favorite song, or I like this record, or hey, this is new. Like, there's something always to find.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is absolutely fantastic. I met Steven Tyler, and he is a person on another level, man.
Oh, I bet.
He is on another level. Very cool, man. People don't appreciate, that he really does embody just a phenomenal musician, obviously, and just really cool. And I don't say this often, but he is a cool cat. We'll just say it.
That's awesome. That's good to hear. I would always wanted to meet him. I mean, my time's running out, obviously, but
Yeah. Well, we might get there.
Right, yeah.
So. Dan, didn't I help you with that? Didn't I go out there with you?
Yeah,
that's right.
That's for behind the scenes conversation.
Sure.
Excellent.
But definitely. We'll just say that he's a very nice guy. I'll say this too. This will probably make sense. A lot of people think about Steven Tyler in the kind of the style of the 80s, and there's something to be said. That's actually just his style. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the 80s. That was just him and the things that he liked and the way that he is and the way he does things. And I always thought like that was just what that time was about. It's like, no, he defined what so much of that was. And you can't underestimate the influence, right? Because as in Josh, Mark, right? Is it art that imitates life or life that imitates art? And of course it's both, right? Like there's this two-way communication between us and the music that we're listening to, or the movies that we're watching and the games that we're playing. Like you have to go through this back and forth. And so like, you just can't see what the true impact is of that type of an artist. So
yeah, the origin of a trend, or the original trend starter. I had experience with that like years and years ago. I was fortunate enough to see Judas Priest live.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
Wow. And I was sitting there watching it. I love Judas Priest, but they're bringing out the motorcycles and the leather, and I'm like, this is so 80s and cheesy. I love it. And I had a moment. I'm like, no, that they started this.
They did it.
That's their thing.
Those guys.
Yeah. Everybody imitated them. And it's like, oh, wow. You know, it just, you know, it didn't change the experience. It was just a weird epiphany I had, you know, sitting there in Columbus, Ohio, watching Judas Priest. And I was like, this is phenomenal. But God, this is corny. And I love it. Oh, there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, and if they hadn't done that, right, you wouldn't have had the experience and everybody else wouldn't have been impacted. You know, and so when you think about rock and roll, like, of course I think about motorcycles and I think about leather vests and I think about, like, but why did that stuff go together all of a sudden? You know, well, Hell's Angels was part of Woodstock, and you go back to, you know, like that time period in history, and where was all that stuff happening right then and there? Well, McIntosh is powering the system, like when all that stuff happened. So I'm sitting there like, it goes full circle, right? Like it's this giant loop. It just over and over, like we always come back to that, you know, to our origins or to our roots. Like you can't escape it. It's unbelievable.
Yep.
So.
And a lot of musicians are big Mac fans too. I've, you know, either find this out through the grapevine or their social media. But, you know, I don't like necessarily have any NDAs that's been signed in that regard. But, you know, I do know like John Mayer is a huge Macintosh enthusiast. He's got some unique pieces in his collection. I've seen some stuff from like Brad Wilk from Rage Against the Machine. He's got our turntable and some other pieces, I believe. Yep. But you know, I'm always excited to see Mac pop up on Celebrity Homes because it's just fun, and then also it's always exciting to see it in movies too because it does show up in movies, and we have nothing to do with that. That's just them making the decision to have it. We do no product placement there. That is 100% the production house is just having it there.
That's awesome. One of my favorites is the end of The Departed when she's listening to the fake to the recording that he sends her, and she's sitting there and she's got that Macintosh dial and she just turns it up on the headphone on the front, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is just it's so fantastic. It's so good to see that.
Okay, yeah, no, it's just one of the things. It's so like it's been used in those iconic scenes, and you know the part phenomenal movie, you know. You know, and it just shows up in all these unique. It's kind of like Where's Waldo. I just like I watch the series, and it's like, oh yeah, that's that. And like even when we had our old townhouse in New York, we have a new one now, House of Sound, just launched a couple months ago.
Nice.
It's really cool. By appointment only tours, phenomenal experience. But the previous townhouse, it showed up in a lot of movies as well. It was used in quite a bit of some Netflix short limited series. Some things like that. So it's always a shock to us because we don't know what's coming, and you know there's no talks. You know, I've had those conversations with our higher ups, and they're like, no, we don't ask, or it just shows up. So
because people like it. Yeah, that's why it's a benchmark, right?
Yep. There's a bunch of anytime it shows up on a show, there's a bunch of Macintosh employees just texting each other. Did you see this? Screenshotting and taking photos with it. I think that one newest Netflix movie. Leave the World Behind. There's a couple of Macintosh pieces in that one too.
I was going to bring that up. Because awesome. I literally watched the trailer for it, and that was the only thing other than is that the one with Julia Roberts, I guess?
Yep.
But that's other than her being in it. I remember seeing a Macintosh setup, and it was like pretty far away, like kind of blurry in the trailer. So I was like, well, okay, maybe I should watch this movie just to see what gear they have, you know?
Yep, absolutely. And it was a really cool, part of the scene where they're, actually using the system, but the message, without getting into how crazy that movie really was really pro physical media. So buying records, buying CDs, having things on there. So hey, that was kind of a direction toward a message for our cause is to enjoy physical media because what happens if the internet goes down?
Yeah. No, we've yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but if you listen to our episodes, we will jump on that bandwagon all day, every day, because I do I'm not a Luddite, in a sense, so like I don't want to go backwards. So I do see positives and convenience and things like that, but yeah, 1,000%. We need to actually listen to things that are on a physical medium. And I think more than anything else, just because the quality is so much better that it brings you back to why it is that you were doing it in the first place. And I think the best way for those who don't really listen to the, two side by side, it'd be like trying to go to a steakhouse and them not putting salt on your steak. It's like, yeah, like you could do it, I guess. I don't know that I want to do that.
Yep.
Right? But like, no, like you should definitely season the food. Like, like it's going to make a big difference in your level of enjoyment and what it is we're about to do. So
absolutely. Yep. No, it's always one of those things is like, how do you enjoy and how far we've come, especially with recording. And now, like if you're trying to make something sound like it did back in the day, that's a choice. Back then they didn't have a choice.
Right.
That's just what they got. And the boxy drums and, room sound, wall of sound type stuff. And now like you can make that decision. We've seen this with the Black Keys and a lot of they say they want an old style recording. It's like you want an old sound is what you're looking for. And now we can really get the best out of it.
Well, we have Third Man Records here in Nashville, right? And White Stripes. And, Jack White very famously, right, I think is about going back to the old way of doing things and a lot of the things that he does. And you can hear it, man, when we go through and, and I was going to ask you for some demos, but I mean, we've covered so many already. It's like, when you hear something that was recorded well and you go, oh, that's amazing. It takes the art to another level, right? It takes your listening experience to another level. And it actually allows you to communicate more effectively. I mean, if I only used 4-letter words, like I might be entertaining for a minute or two, but I'd have a very hard time expressing a complex thought. So like you got to do, like you need to expand your vocabulary. You need to, grow your way of communicating. And I think that's what some of those artists are really doing, quite honestly, is they're pushing their art, right? And the technology is a piece to get us to that place. And if you don't have a system that can get you there, that can actually reproduce what's going on, then you're missing out. Like you're not even watching or listening to the same thing anymore. You're getting a bottlenecked, distorted, copy of, or, well, and of course you don't care about it. It had no impact. Well, because you didn't hear what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's all kinds of stuff. There's sub-octave notes that are happening that are absolutely incredible. There's harmonic structures in certain instruments and things like that just really, the timbre is present in that recording. And on the flip side, I growing up listened to a lot of music that was not recorded well at all.
Sure.
Bad Brains. That was a
Mm-hmm.
great example. Bad Brains. A lot of the old metalcore I was playing back in the day, recorded in basements and stuff like that. And the goal is to kind of have a system that not only takes advantage of all the major details you can get out of these incredible multi-million-dollar recordings that are in Stellar, or the incredible bedroom recordings that Billie Eilish and Phineas do, but you can also get something that's forgiving for the recordings that you have that weren't really recording. So it's still listenable, it's still pleasing, it's still musical, even though it was a microphone in a room. There's a very a well-known indie rock band out of the Dayton, Ohio area called Guided by Voices, who is known for doing very garage-esque recordings, and that's kind of their style. So you don't want anything that's going to be distorting that any more than it needs to be. So you want it to be very forgiving.
Yeah.
And so that's always kind of a nice goal on both ends of the spectrum. But yeah, Bad Brains was another example I always use because I'm a huge Bad Brains fan, and oh boy, those are some unique recordings.
Oh man, those. And listen, I remember listening to the first time, and I go, "Oh my goodness, that's unlike anything I've ever heard in my entire life," and it was very impactful. And now, so admittedly, like it's not on my everyday playlist, like I'm old now and I'm slow and, a little heavy and all those kinds of things. And so like, I'm not, bouncing off the walls like I used to as a younger man, maybe, but that had a certain, when you go back and you listen to it, right, the nostalgia that gets hit, right. And was it really just the performance? Was it really just the energy? Or was there something about the texture, right? Well, if they don't have that recording with that type of a texture, right, to use like a branding analogy, like it would have been off brand. If they were in $1 million studio, you would not respect that music. You would go or them as people or their art. Like you'd be like, you guys are posers. Like that's right.
Yep. Exactly.
But the fact that they recorded it the way that they did and it sounded the way that you did, it was like, nope, that's just what it is, man. And either you're on board or you're not, and that's cool either way. But so.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like, hi-fi is one of those things that really helps you understand whether it was a limitation of their ability or an artistic choice.
Yep.
And a greatest example is this: how many phone calls have I gotten from somebody I've sold a system, a turntable, anything, and they say, I think a speaker's blown, I think something's wrong.
Yes.
And I go over and they're playing a jazz record and the guy's using brushes on the drums and they don't understand that's actually there. That's there
the
for
sound.
Yep.
That's the sound. And they think there's something wrong with their system, and they're like, no, that's a full artistic choice. Some of the modern jazz quartet, a lot of that stuff from the way back in the day, which is phenomenally recorded, and I think we're only now catching up on the playback side to really hear it as it was in the room, or at least as we can get it. I've had a couple guys that are like, I think my speakers are blowing. It's like, no, that drummer's using brushes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. All right, well, we normally ask for some demo tracks, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask. Do you have 2 or 3, maybe that you don't mind sharing, that you use to really show off what a system is capable of, or something unique that we could listen for to really just enjoy on our own systems?
Absolutely. Let me pull up a list here because
preparation, man.
It's not preparation. I'm just pulling up title and it's a playlist.
Oh, there you go.
I feel so unprepared.
That's hilarious. That's awesome.
There's a lot that I can go to. I should probably just start sharing my playlist. I used to, but I should probably get back into it just with everybody, because I'm always trying to find new cool things. And I'm somebody, early back in my day, like I worked at, a record store, one of my first retail jobs ever. So I got really used to kind of reading people and kind of getting a couple of things and kind of knowing, because the worst thing you want to do is hand the iPad over to somebody else and let them decide, because then you don't have control of the demo,
Yeah.
And actually how I got it out of my employees that I was managing system was we'd do role play, and they'd hand me the iPad and I'd play Eye Against Eye by Brad Brains, and I'd be like, this system sounds like poop.
Right.
And they're like, I'm never doing that again. And they're like, oh yeah, right. You lead with a great demo. And some of these demos, like it depends on whoever it is, but like a great demo that I use for like imaging and bass is Erykah Badu's Orange Moon.
Okay. Awesome.
Great clear vocals and right in the center. There's some extra like crickets and some ambiance that happens beyond the speakers if they're set up right. But there's this really, really well recorded, I believe it's an electric upright, because they're getting some really powerful things, and it's a very low dynamic track, but it's very punchy at the same time. It's very unique. It makes the system kind of come alive in some unique ways. Some other tracks that I like to use, depending on
and just to touch on that one real fast, she has a great voice.
Oh, beautiful voice.
Unbelievable. If you're not familiar with Erykah Badu, then like just stop what you're doing, put the podcast on pause, go to your Spotify or your Tidal or your Qbuds or whatever it is, and like just go get into her collection, because she's got some incredible music. Absolutely fantastic.
And if you like
and
her,
then come back here.
Yeah,
then come back here.
And then look up Hiatus Coyote. And that changed my life.
Molasses, man.
Oh,
tell me Molasses.
God, love it. Yeah, that's one of my demo tracks. I won't necessarily recommend it today, but that is one of my demo tracks. I have to have a specific person. It's the Erykah Badu fans that are also Radiohead fans.
Yep. You got to find this perfect balance. Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
oh my goodness, that's so hilarious that you dropped Radiohead with her. Oh my goodness,
love Radiohead. Another track that I really like to use, and this is good for people who maybe are more into movies, aren't necessarily a big music listener. I mean, everybody's a music listener, but are looking for like probably buying a system for the sake of playing movies more on it, is the Stable Song by Gregory Alan Isaacoff, specifically the one with the Colorado Symphony. It's a very cinematic piece. It's very melancholy. It starts out with just kind of acoustic guitar, him in the center of it, but then the Colorado Symphony comes in, and it just kind of blooms into this very cinematic sounding music, and it's a really good track. I've had people tear up on that one.
Awesome.
It's very emotional, so playing that on a good system with high dynamics, because there's some timpanis in there and some strings, and it really starts to pull at those heartstrings. I'm hiccuping. I'm not actually being emotional.
That's all right.
That's
I mean,
okay.
it's cool, man.
Another one that I like to use, and this is another one for people who are really into soundtracks or into doing a movie. Is it's from the American Beauty soundtrack. It's called "Dead Already." Composer Thomas Newman. Be careful with that one. I've had amps actually peak. Not Mac will handle it no problem, but I've had some old tube amps from some other brands actually go into protect mode on that, because there is some dynamics that happen in that are you won't see it coming. It's unique. So
yep, it's funny you mentioned Thomas Newman, because I think he also did the music for Shawshank Redemption, I want to say. And 3 nights ago, my wife and I were sitting there listening to it, and then turns out he also did the music for Little Women. And so we start going through like his IMDb, and I'm like, he did what? And he did, man, like we were floored at what it is that guy's actually written for. I mean, he's everywhere, and very like he doesn't necessarily have a sound that you would expect to be so transferable, but he's such a good composer that he can take you in so many different directions. Like he's just incredible. So
yep. Yeah, so Dead Already, American Beauty soundtrack, phenomenal demo track. I'll give you a couple more. I don't want to keep you all night. I can go all night, honest to God. I really like. There's a record called the New Cool. It's Bob James and Nathan East. Bob James from Foreplay, lots of jazz work there, keyboardist, and then Nathan East, who most famously is the bass player on Daft Punk's like Get Lucky and all that stuff, but this is their jazz stuff. It's just piano and bass. Very, very clean, modern recording of jazz. Really anything off that whole album is phenomenal. I use Oliver's Bag because as Nathan is walking down the bass line, you can actually hear him breathing.
Wow.
Because he's taking breaths and holding his breath as he does things.
Sure.
And it only happens on high resolution systems. It's super cool. So I highly recommend it. It's been out for a few years. It's in high res. So that one's a good one. For the rock and country listeners, Death Row, Cliff Stapleton is a great, go-to with no explanation there. Lots of cool stuff happening. And then what was the other one? There was another one I've been using.
Well, it's funny as you look for that, I'll just jump in and say I can't tell you the number of times that we put somebody puts an iPad in the customer's hand and Chris Stapleton comes out the other side. And it's like there's a lot of folks. I love that. So yeah, definitely a lot of Chris Stapleton, especially in Nashville. We get a lot of that.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, he was kind of king of the castle in certain walks of life out there. Thanks to Justin Timberlake, he went pro.
Yep.
I'd like to get him I really like to get him in the chair and get into his head. I'm sure he's got some great recommendations. Hopefully he's got a solid system on him. There's another one.
If not, if you're listening, call me.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll hook you up.
Absolutely. I'm there for the setup. I'll drive in.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Another one. Again, this is one of those like singer-songwriter ones that's just kind of gives you the case of somebody in the that's in the room is an artist called Ondera.
Okay.
And he used to go by like JS Ondera, but now he's just doing Ondera, Ondara. And this track that I use is called American Dream. He's very much in that Tracy Chapman singer-songwriter, but he's from, I believe he's from Nigeria. and he was very young. He's probably late 20s now, but he's been around for a while. Obsessed with Bob Dylan. Moved to Minneapolis because he was obsessed with Bob Dylan, and now does Americana music better than any American I've ever heard.
Wow!
So phenomenal voice. I it was one of those that like I saw the album cover and I got it's just him on a street corner, real almost 90s singer-songwriter, nothing to it, but I'm like, I know where this is going and I'm buying this right now.
That's awesome.
I love it. If you're into like Tracy Chapman or anything like that, if you want to, from a demo purpose, it's a very honest recording of a singer-songwriter in the room, very clean. I know Kobuz was celebrating him quite a bit, so that was a really good way to find him. And then the old classic that I like to use, and this is for if you're wanting to do a really good imaging track, your system set up, you're in the right spot, you want to hear things left and right, all that stuff. You want to do Apple's spatial audio before spatial audio is Paranoid Eyes, Pink Floyd.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, of course. Yeah, man.
It's going to make a classic.
Absolutely. Man, I cannot tell you the number of times that me and one of our coworkers sat in our premium room and Pink Floyd was on and you just start to finish a whole record and it's just like, man, it's an experience unto itself. We didn't have to smoke or drink anything to just have a great time.
Yep.
Not that we do that. I just want to be very clear. Yep. But very good stuff.
Yeah,
awesome.
And with Pink Floyd, it's one of those things that like I learned to appreciate them later in life, and hi-fi definitely helped with that.
1,000%, because you can't really appreciate Pink Floyd, I think, it on a Bluetooth speaker for $100. And I don't care how good that speaker is, right? But again, it goes back to that communication concept, right? Like you're just not hearing what's going on. Like it's not even a thing. So 1,000%. Hi-fi is transformative in that way. 1,000%. Well, listen, I want to ask one last question, and I where do you see hi-fi going? Because, and you can take that any direction you want to, man. Because to me, it's kind of weird, in the sense that hi-fi is such a mature industry already. Like in a lot of ways. Turntables and amps and preamps and things like that, like they've been around for so long, right? And not that, if you're new to this, that, all right, that's one thing. But, for guys who have been doing this for a while, it's like, where do you see the future of hi-fi specifically going? Because that is like, how do you make something mature more mature, right? Mm-hmm. Like what's, so is there anything, and you don't have to reveal any secrets or, I'm not asking for product release, but just like in general, like, do you see hi-fi going, in the next, say 5 or 10 years?
That's a great question. And, that one I could do a separate podcast in its entirety probably on, but
okay. What are you doing next week?
but I'll do a kind of abridged version of what I think and how I've kind of felt it out. And I haven't been in the industry as long as a lot of my peers. I mean, we have some people that's been in here, since hi-fi was the thing.
Yeah.
Because, we think about it like back in the day, young people, used to critically listen to music a whole lot more. Now we have a lot more things that we can consume with our time. We got PC gaming. We got, people have production studios built in their house, podcasting. We have all these things that we can do other than critically listen to music. So as long as music consumption as a hobby continues, I see a lot of companies outside of the hi-fi world kind of throwing hi-fi a bone in a way, because obviously it did dwindle because people are spending their money elsewhere, right? And they're not a lot of more people just passively listen to music more than anything probably now. I wouldn't say that, but I mean a lot of people passively listen to music. It's just there in the background. It's top 40, which still sounds phenomenal in the right system, but it's in the car, it's in the background. It is what it is. But I see like an example is like Apple, who systematically probably destroyed hi-fi listening for a while.
In a way, yeah.
and then now is trying to bring it back. And thank goodness for that, because now they're trying to bring their version of spatial audio or whatever with, I'm listening here and I turn my head and it stays right there, which is what speakers have been doing this whole freaking time.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. So they're not. It's nothing new. It's the NutriBullet to the blender.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing, just repackaged. And then they're bringing back high res, and they gave it to everybody at no additional cost. So those are things that now that I pay for music all the time, and I have an endless catalog of of whatever I can listen to, can I get the best out of it? And that's where those conversations begin with like a brand like Project or even Rotel. They may not jump up to the Mac just right away, but eventually they may get that itch and they may jump into the ultra high end. Who knows? I've seen kids go in and buy $4,000 headphones as their second or third pair of headphones. It does happen. But as long as music listening and consumption happens as a hobby, and I see it actually growing. There's some market research that that says that, especially the American market, there is still high potential for the next 5 to 10 years in that market. And so again, I think it's really just going to be how influencer culture and our movies and our TV are going to influence how we do our hobbies. Yep. You notice like shows like Grand Tour and Top Gear came out. Everybody's now into foreign race cars.
That's right.
And so if there can be things like that through, say, TikTok and Instagram, and all these things, that as people share their experiences, it'll grow. It'll grow back to more than it ever was. We're doing really well now, but there is room for more of it, and which means people are giving money to their artists, and it goes in circles. More money into the artist's hand, better the music's going to be. Yep. Same thing for movies. I mean, we've seen movies quality dwindling a little bit. If we can figure out a better way to get more hands in some, outside of just the blockbuster and into some actual storytellers' hands, we're going to get better movies in the long run. So I see it going that, and it's cool to see movies that example, like having Mac gear and having high-end gear, and we not having any control over that or having any say so in that. We're not putting that there to push our brand. People who are enthusiasts of the brand are putting it in there to look cool or have a good look or have something that actually like sets the mood and the sound and everything that's there. So I think there's a lot to be said about that. But in a nutshell, I think it's going to grow. Thankful through the technologies that are making it happen.
Yep. And you're one of many guests now that keeps saying spatial audio, and it's become an unintentional reoccurring theme, I think, that we continue to talk about, which is very surprising to me. I would have never guessed before we started this that that's the direction people would go, but it really is, that immersive experience. And I think it's because, we spend so much time on our phones. We spend so much time away from a high quality experience that it's like, well, I need a reason now to put my phone down, to get off of Instagram, to get off of TikTok, to enjoy what really could potentially be going on. And so what's the physics, right? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? It's the same concept. Like, we've gone to low quality, we're going to bounce back to high quality, right?
Absolutely. So, and another one of that was video gaming as well. The soundtracks of that's getting phenomenal.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Yeah, 1,000%.
There's a reason to have a good system.
Plug our previous guest, Steve Pardo. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to that episode. I mean, he talks about what they're doing in game sound now, and it's on another level. It's absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
All right. Mark, you got anything else?
Oh man, I appreciate you joining in. a fellow Ohioan. It's always nice to have one of a fellow Ohioan on there. Enjoy some Skyline chili for me if you don't mind. Even if you don't like it, you still need to have some for me.
Yep, absolutely. I'll send you a photo.
Sure.
Well, and with that, I would just like to say thank you for listening to The Sound of Design.
Mark?
And Dan and...
Josh Quinn, McIntosh.
There we go. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you have questions, reach out to us over at thesoundofdesign.com. You can see examples of our work and some of the systems, including McIntosh and Rotel, Simiko, and Project. And we will see you guys on the next episode.